Morning. I did turn it on.
How are you, Mike?
Good.
Mine. Mhm.
Call the order, right?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's open the meeting with public comment. Any public comment on any subject not on the agenda? Yeah. Kyle?
The Townsend Health Board and the District Board have agreed to have a joint public meeting on the 16th of October, 10:30 at the community meeting room at the school. To talk and listen, more than listen, any public comment. And at that point in time, once we've had the public comment, they will break into their respective business meetings. And it looks like this is all going to be about the transition from Broadwater Health Center to Billings Clinic. And we're prepared at this point in time through all the documents that need to be done to at least consider transferring the membership from the THS board to the Billings Clinic Board, as well as transferring land and property on the district board's side of this. So it'll be a good session for public hearing. Learn more about the process, and if that goes well, there's probably a chance that they'll resolve both boards into any motions that are necessary to make the transition happen. Does that make sense? You look like you have a question.
Do you know, is Billy Clinty's gonna establish a local board, and do you know when and how they will do that, or?
Yes, their whole operation process is to ensure that there's adequate local comment and local support and local say as they go forward. So they're going to be looking for at least 3 members of the community to be on their board representing Broadwater Health Center, representing Broadwater County.
So do you know how often would they meet here?
I think it'll be a monthly.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's a monthly. Most of their other affiliates meet on a monthly basis.
Any other questions? That's all I have. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Any other public comment? Tim?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Tim with Redog News. Just a couple of questions for clarification on today's agenda, and if I'm out of line, go ahead and stop me, but 11:15, you have on the agenda a closed door regarding right to privacy, and as I understand, under our open meeting and that right under Article 2, Section 10, we're looking at an issue that needs to be discussed behind closed doors. Most of the time, from what I've seen in my experience, is certainly that privacy is paramount, but on the behalf of the citizens, it's a good deal to be able to say, okay, this is a legal matter, or this is an internal matter, without mentioning any names. That helps the people understand, because there's been a lot of questions about why are closed doors being closed. The second question is on your agenda that you sent out, the revised, well, not necessarily, but tomorrow at 11 o'clock, Congressman Gianforte is going to be here. Do you have any specifics as far as whether that's a campaign stop, whether that's something that's ongoing within Broadwater County, or if it's just a general visit? If you could answer those 2 questions, that would be awesome.
Yes, Kyle?
Congressman Gianforte asked to come and have a listening session, basically with city, county, and hospital. He's been recently appointed on a health subcommittee for the House of Representatives, and has a keen interest on how small rural hospitals are surviving. So
Okay.
that's primarily his focus.
Okay.
Thank you. And then as far as the other question, if you can answer that, if not.
Well, it's just a personnel issue. That's-
Okay. All right, thank you.
We will, any other public comment? Go through some mail here. We have minutes of September 30th and October 2nd.
I'll move that we approve the minutes for September 30th, October 2nd.
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve minutes for September 30th and October 2nd. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried.
you.
See, we have a task order from Department of Public Health Human Services. This is for the finalization of the termination of WIC in Broadwater County. It was effective March 12th, 2019. Need to sign this. Is there a motion to sign this termination notice, which has already taken effect?
I think it should be clarified that it's terminating it with Broadwater County Public Health, not terminating the service in the county. And with that statement, I will move to support signing of the letter canceling the WIC in public health only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to sign the termination WIC between Department of Health Human Services and Broadwater County Public Health. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Payroll claims in the amount of $184,690.08.
Will we approve the payroll claims in the amount of $184,690.08?
Second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to pay payroll claims to said amount. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Have a hands alert from Broadwater County Public Health for the food preparation safety. Have mail here from Action Print. Monthly specials. Rural Montana Magazine from Vigilante Electric. National Air Transportation Association, Voice of Aviation Business. Safety Training Center. See, we'll close the commissioners' meeting and open a public hearing to adopt a resolution to update floodplain regulations for Broadwater County. Is there any public comment on the floodplain regulations? They're there. What are you reading there?
Is
Yes,
it
Tim.
possible, you folks have had a chance to go through this a lot more than the
Yeah.
public, would you be able to give the people just a real quick, short summary of its change, if there is any?
I don't know that there are.
I don't know of any, but
Any changes. Pretty much it's part of the floodplain CIP and the growth policy to redo those floodplains, and the only adoptions, I don't even know if there's any in there. It's basically just follows the state guidelines of what had already been established by, not by FEMA, I think by the national floodplain people.
and again, just was wondering if there's any changes that you're
No, I
aware
don't
of
believe
to
that
what
there's
we
anything
currently have.
significant in there at all.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further comments or discussion? Okay, if not, we will close the hearing and move to a decision to adopt a resolution to update the floodplain regulations for Broadwater County.
I'll move to update the floodplain regulations for Broadwater County as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the floodplain regulations as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Are you with Great West?
I am.
We just finished. We just adopted them.
Oh.
Well,
Thanks
Sorry,
for
I'm late.
coming, Phil.
Jerry told me
We have to-
10:15.
Right, we were a little early.
Okay.
Do you, maybe, Mr. Chairman, if there's anything to add, I don't know if there's any flavor.
Do you know, are there any, there's very few changes in those regulations, is there?
The only thing that was changed was there's an appendix added that incorporated letters of map change that have occurred in the last 4 or 5 years. I've got a copy of the amended ordinance.
yeah. The last page, right?
Yep, last page, so there's 5 or so letters of map amendment that have been adopted in the last 5 years, and so this is just a convenient way for the county to update the regulations in the future without having to update the main body of text. And Jerry worked closely with the DNRC in improving the way that this was formatted, and they were good with it. My name's Jonathan Weaver, by the way.
Hi, Jonathan, nice to meet you. Yeah, he did a nice job on this, made it really clear.
Great.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
And you're welcome to stay.
All right. Well, glad I could help.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Jonathan, just a
Yes.
real quick question.
Yes, sir.
The amendments that are going into the existing floodplain policy are just reflected from past changes. There is nothing new that is incorporated into the draft, or in this draft, that you can
That's
cover. We're just trying to make sure we let the people know.
correct. There's an appendix added that incorporates, they're called letters of map amendments.
Right.
Which are a letter from FEMA saying that a specific property or a piece of property is not in the floodplain anymore. And those specific letters of map amendment have been incorporated in the appendix to the floodplain regulations. But other than that, there were no changes to the floodplain regulations made.
So, Mr. Chair, just real quick follow-up. Just, so the amendments and the mapping, there is nothing new this year in 2019? I guess that's the point of where I'm trying to make sure I understand.
Right, no changes to the ordinance or the mapping this year.
Thank you, sir.
Just the addition of the one with, all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Let's see, we can go to our 1015 tax refund for the Thornton Property Department Revenue Assessment Error and Tax Overpayment. You want to go ahead and address this, Laura?
No, I sent all the information to Daryl. This is his district, so I'll let him go ahead and take it.
All right, it was the Thorntons that lived down in the Three Forks area. And they had been over-assessed on their taxes. They realized that this year and talked to the Department of Revenue, and I guess, did the Department of Revenue come out and reassess their property? Do we know that? Okay, so the Department of Revenue came out and reassessed their property and determined that they had been over-assessed on their payments. So it's up to the decision of the commission to decide whether we're going to refund that payment.
And I think Roz included the MCA that says how far we can go back, or Doug did.
It says that we can go back 5 years. The Department of Revenue stance is they only go back 2 years, sometimes only 1 year. So I guess we need to decide how many years we're gonna go back.
And how much is the difference?
I don't know, I don't have that information.
I think that was in the email I forwarded. It was a spreadsheet from Doug.
I never received it, I guess.
I would suggest that the law says 5. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room there, but I would like this commission to send a letter to DOR and ask them to do the 2 years, since it was their error. I believe they should do the 5, but they won't, and that's not in law. And then at least get the 1 year, if we can. I'd be happy to make that into a motion if that's what you want, or if we're ready.
So would we have the DOR do 2 years so we would cover the other 3, or how would we do that?
That would be the request, yeah. They're under no obligation. I don't know what, the law just says the county will cover the 5 years, but we can't go back more. They've been overassessed, I think, for 9 or 10. So we can do 5 years, but I would like to send a letter to Department of Revenue and ask them to cover 2 of those, since it was their error. And I understand they'll do at least 1, especially since Thornton's did reach out to them this year and get the reassessment. DOR didn't confirm this, but Julie told me on the phone that it was a doghouse that increased their taxes and square footage. I think that's kind of funny.
Is the DOR, they're obligated for a year, they can go up to 2, or that's just their, whatever whim they're up to?
I think it's their policy. I don't think they're obligated. But I think if we don't ask, they for sure won't do 2 years. At least if we ask and lay out our side of the argument, they can have that to consider.
So I guess one of my questions is why they didn't discover it until now.
The
You know?
property owners.
Yeah, the property owner.
Yeah.
If you want to postpone this a week and make that call and find that answer, that would be fine with me.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, and I'd also like to know just what the difference is.
Hmm.
So do we want to postpone a decision on this until we get more information?
I think that's the thing to do.
Yeah, I would agree. So we will postpone a decision on this until we get more information from the Department of Revenue and also from the Thornton.
And that's fine, but I do want to remind this commission we are under legal obligation to go that 5 years,
Okay.
since we do have proof of the overpayment.
Yes, Tim?
Question on the matter, has the fully formed tax appeal board weighed in on this particular issue?
I don't think that this went to the tax appeals board.
It wouldn't,
Would not?
no.
No.
Why wouldn't?
Okay.
Why?
Is there a reason why that would not have gone to the tax appeal board? When they're appealing the tax assessment and the payment that's been paid?
Is there a reason for that, or didn't go to the tax appeals board?
Yeah, it's really quite simple. The Thorntons reached out to Department of Revenue and said, hey, I think you've made an error. Department of Revenue went out to the Thorntons property and said, oops, I think we agree with you. And so there's no need. The tax appeal board is for those people who say, Department of Revenue, you overassessed my property. And Department of Revenue says, no, we didn't, we followed our process. So when that happens, any landowner has the right to appeal to the tax appeal board, which is a county board. And then if they don't like that answer, they have the right to appeal to the state tax appeal board. But this is not a tax appeal in any way. It's the finding of an error in which Department of Revenue said, oops, we agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's important to know that the MCA that they're requesting this on it. So it's MCA 15-16-603, subsection C. It says, on a tax penalty or interest collected as a result of an error in the description or location of real property or improvements, or for duplicate taxes, paid as determined by Department of Revenue. So that's the statute that they're using.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do these folks, if we say we're only gonna go back 5 years, is that the only, they don't have any other recourse to recover that money that was, if they were over assessed for 10 years, they're only legally allowed 5 years?
That's what it appears to me. Yeah, I'm no expert on it. But that's what we ran into with Tim. Timmy Ty.
Rick Meyer
Rick Meyer.
and Campbell?
Exactly, yeah. They both came in at the same time, and that's where we learned that particular law and requirement.
Okay. Let's see, extension of contract with Bill Jiraki for county budget citizens team creation, strategic planning for budget priorities.
So this, as you guys know, this was kind of a beginning of a conversation at conference. I did meet with Bill Jiraki, and he was already, before we met, researching a new movement around counties around the country to form, they're actually called County Budget Citizens Team. And what they do is they assist the commission in reviewing budget realities, setting strategic planning for budgets. Generally, there are teams of 5. And what he suggested is maybe we should have a white paper kind of describing the whole process, how this has worked in other counties, kind of learn from them, also learn from their mistakes so that we don't repeat them, but take the best practices and put something together here. He would be happy to walk us through a strategic planning. It wouldn't necessarily be where the team would go to every single budget meeting through the process, because as you know, we start in February or March and go for hours every single Monday and sometimes on Wednesdays. That's a heavy lift for a volunteer. But for a team member to get an overview of the budget, so there'd be a couple of training sessions to educate, And then they would deep dive into a section of the budget, come back as a group and share what they have learned from that particular area. So it becomes a process where we learn, they learn, and we have a bigger group with citizens more fully informed of the budget. So, if we want to do this, we should extend his contract and proceed that way.
So will be citizen involvement in this process? Is that right?
That's, it's called the county, well, we could change it, but what it's usually called is a citizens team. So he didn't think advisory board, like most of our boards, was the right thing to call this. He did, and I agree with him, he thought the word team would be a much better word for the citizens group. They're still advisory, they still don't have decision-making power, because the law puts that in our lap. But, yeah, the citizens would have very personal and in-depth involvement in the strategic planning of the budget and education of the budget, the process, the realities, yeah, be an integral part of the process.
Okay. I know we've kind of talked about the idea of recreating our budget committee. Would this kind of work in conjunction with that somehow or no?
Budget committee.
Yeah, I mean amongst our department heads and elected officials.
I would suggest citizens be on this team, because they don't have each department head's gonna rightfully so advocate for their department. They do that already. There's an open process, we meet with them individually at least once, sometimes multiple times. The citizens come in without an agenda, or if they do come in with say they have a passion for the library, the idea from Bill would be, you'd actually have them deep dive into the general fund, which doesn't include the library, so they get a little bit more well-rounded view. But I would not think that it would be appropriate to include department heads or elected officials, because they're already advocating for their own. The idea would be to work more closely with the citizens, educate a group of citizens into the process and all the intricacies of it.
Right, so who would run this team or chair the team, or how's that set up?
It wouldn't be decided until we know who the team is, and then like all
So
our boards,
they would select amongst themselves who would do that, is that?
probably, I
the
would
plan would
imagine
be.
that'll be in the white paper, but I can't imagine that we would decide that now.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great idea to get our citizens involved in the budget process. I mean, it's always good to have those folks have a better understanding of the budget and also to have the input, so.
Are you good
I
with
think it could be
extending the
beneficial.
contract then with Bill so that he has go-ahead to put together this white paper
Mhm.
and then also to start putting together some ideas for the strategic planning of this team?
So would our contract be with them the same as the one we had previously with them?
Yeah, the same price, you mean?
Same price and
Yep.
that kind of stuff?
Yep.
So would Debbie be part of this team as far as, so who's gonna get the citizens, people organized, and then who's gonna take them through the steps of the budget? Is Bill gonna do all that?
We would be
Okay.
we would be intimately involved.
Okay.
Thank you. As far as, and again, this would go to the white paper, so I don't know, this is new to me too. But as far as taking us through a strategic planning process, as far as putting together what those training sessions would be to educate them, because you're not gonna just throw them into the budget and say, okay, what do you wanna do? They have to understand what limitations we have, you know, how much fruit our paper or our money tree in the backyard is producing. They need to know all those pieces, so there would have to be an education process. Debbie, I would imagine, would be advisory to this team as the finance officer. I would expect that Doug would too, and I would expect that any member of the team who had a question on a budget makes that department head or elected official advisory to them as well. If they go to them with a list of questions, they should be able to expect to get answers to those.
So I guess Debbie will probably be responsible for providing them with the information they need.
Well,
Is that kind of how?
I wouldn't put it all on Debbie, no, especially during the budget season,
Right.
because she's full. I would think that if they went to, and again, back to the white paper, I don't know all the answers, but anybody who asks a department head a question about the budget should be able to get that also from the department head, and perhaps have that vetted by Debbie, or get it from both, and ensure that the information understanding is uniform. That might be a big part of this.
Well, I guess maybe what we need to do is have Bill come down here and maybe give a better explanation, so we have an idea how this would work out.
Well, that's the white
Yeah.
paper.
Mhm.
He would like a month to put that together so he
Mhm.
can do his research. But we need to let him know that we're gonna pay him for him to do that work. So the question would be, are you good with extending his contract to put this white paper together and then come down and work us through what his vision of this process would be based on best practices adopted from other counties?
Sure, I'd like to take a look at that.
So that's a yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, then, I'll just send an email and you guys can
Okay.
let me know what you think of it and then I'll send it on to Bill,
Okay, yes.
okay?
Tim Ravendall,
Tim.
citizen, I was part of that original scoping process to create this team, and multiple officials sitting at the table said they were going to go around and start looking at recruiting to build this team. The question I guess I have at this point in this process is, how much is that contract? Is it on an hourly basis? And is there a sunset on that contract before this gets too much further?
What team were you involved in creating, Tim?
I was at the meeting where Mr. Jiraki was here and the discussion of creating this team.
Would you come back to the podium, please?
My apologies.
This is actually separate of that.
Okay.
This is not, that was a team to work with the sheriff to take out to the public a proposal for a mill levy. So this is actually quite different. This is an advisory team, citizens budget team to work on a strategic plan. So this is different than that.
Okay, at that meeting, it was discussed both that the sheriff's department or public safety department was still needing to have some more review, but at that same meeting, this general budget discussion was discussed during that team meeting, or during that meeting. So that's why I
Right,
asked.
two different meetings, two different ideas, two different structures.
Right, so anyway,
And some of the
contract
ones,
and how much and how long?
some of the ones that the other discussion was, that we had was with the sheriff's department is to get a committee together to see if there was enough support for mill levy. And the other part of that was also to have Mr. Jiraki go through some of the rest of our budget to study our budget some more. But it didn't involve this, citizens team at that time, that hadn't been discussed.
I apologize if I missed that, because that's what I thought we were going forward, and I have never heard anything from Mr. Jiraki or any of the commissioners or anyone else, so thank you.
Yes, Corey?
I guess, just following up on that, so how much is this gonna cost in height? Is it in your budget now to pay for that?
Do we have an idea on that, or do we got to talk to?
I don't know an exact, I mean, it's $50 an hour, what he makes now. The idea to have him help the sheriff's office understand the budget was met with great support. And from everything I've been told and heard, it was extremely successful. To kind of have a different voice, using a different set of words to explain what we've had explained. For some reason, he was a dynamite communicator. And we've got feedback in these public meetings that it was appreciated by both the sheriff and the undersheriff. So, I think if we can invest in a way to more fully engage the public and our citizens, I think we need to look at that. And, you know, we're a 3 yes so far, that we think it's important to engage our citizens and to help them understand the budget process and to put together a strategic plan that revolves around the citizens. I guess that's my answer.
I guess it's $50 an hour, we really don't know what he's gonna charge us to come up with that plan.
No, I mean, his bills have been pretty small for what he's done, as you guys well know from the claims. The question is, how worth it is it for us to invest in better communication with our citizens?
Well, maybe we can just kinda ask him what he thinks what it'll take, how many hours or whatever. So we maybe have an idea if we're going into it.
So at this point, you have a source for the funds, identified source for the funds. Determine what I'm asking.
I think the same source as the money we use to help the sheriff's office. That'd be my suggestion.
Which is what? Is that total?
What's
I don't
that?
know where it came out of. Do you guys do remember the claims? We certainly had it.
That came out
because
of Pilt, didn't it?
I don't remember the claims.
I don't remember where we paid them out of either.
Yeah, we do have the funds, of course, but,
Okay.
and when it comes to communicating with the public, that's one of our greatest charges. But yeah, I don't remember what the claim said. We can retrieve those.
I guess I can't remember either, if it came out of filter, if the commissioners paid for it, I can't remember.
Well, I think the commission paid for it, I know the commission paid for it, there was some talk about that, but, and that was the proposal when I brought the idea forward, is that we would pay for that. And I think it was the right thing to do,
I think that's what I remember.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, we do have a line item for communicating with the public. That's what this is.
Kyle,
And I'll stand on the hill and say I think it's important to communicate with the public any day of the week.
What was that,
I
Corey?
just want to provide a comment. I think it's a great idea to have citizen involvement in this, and I also think it's a great idea for us to look strategically at what we're doing as a county financially. I think there's two components to it that should be included. One isn't just expenditures, but I think one that we can do a lot to educate ourselves on is revenue. I mean, we've talked about this, and I just haven't been able to carve away the time for myself. There's got to be some mechanism for us to be able to keep up with some of the demands of growth when we're finding that the way that the property tax structure is set, we're seeing a 1 and sometimes 2-year lag on receiving revenue, yet we've had to provide services from day one. And there's gotta be a way that we can more creatively look at that. And one of the folks that I had suggested to you at some point in the past was a guy named Bob Story. He's the head of the Montana Taxpayers Association, former county commissioner, former legislator, brilliant in this stuff. And he's expressed willingness to sit down with leaders from our county and just do a couple of things. I think one, analyze, are we actually getting correct assessments from the Department of Revenue? Because as we know, there's a lot of times we're not. And it's not at all unheard of for counties to receive incorrect assessments and taxpayers to receive incorrect assessments. And he's seen in some counties where counties are losing revenue that they were supposed to gain as a result of growth because of the way those mill adjustments were done. And so he said that if I were looking, the first thing I would do is just go through those books and make sure that's happening correctly. And then the second thing I think is that are there mechanisms under law now where, as a result of growth, as a result of new property and all these things, that there are some revenue, the buckets that the county hasn't looked at. And it's something that I think it would just take probably someone who's immersed in that, a tax lawyer or a local government revenue guy to be able to really dig in. I think Bill would be a good source, but he's more on the budgeting end, I'm thinking more on the kind of a tax revenue end. The other comment I would make is that this process could be self-defeating if we're gonna call this strategic. The strategic, they need to have the ability to look at everything. They need to have wide open both access to Black Mountain to go into our books, as well as to sit back and see problems and solutions. So, for example, there's a discussion of a different group that's working on a mill levy for the sheriff's office. Well, that's premature. If we're gonna do a strategic look, we shouldn't start down that road when the strategic group may say, no, that's not the way you guys should do this. You guys should do it this other way. So I would say if there's another group that's doing a separate thing, that it's gonna be automatically less useful and less successful if we have different groups that are kind of doing competing things and they're only looking at certain aspects of the problem. Strategic means we look at the whole picture. And I guess the other issue is the devil in the details of who are these citizens? Who's recruiting them? Is this an actual advisory committee where you're gonna appoint people and you're gonna let them as a committee have a little bit of reign? Or are they basically advisors that only report to the commissioners? And I would urge you to resist the temptation to say, oh, only the commissioners are involved in this. I certainly tend to, if there's a group, I tend to go meet with that group, both for them to educate me, but for me to say, here's what I think is messed up here. And I think you need to be prepared and be willing to listen to a group that's saying, hey, you guys are doing this wrong. There's a lot of successful and I think qualified business people in this community. I've had a couple of them approach me and say, hey, I've been balancing books for 20 years. I'd love to have a chance to sit down and look at your county stuff, because I don't know if you're doing it right or wrong, but my guess is with all the complaining that there's probably some things that need to be fixed. So I'd say let's make it wide open. If that's what you're gonna do, let's make it wide open where they have the ability to come in and tell us your priorities are messed up. And in the strategic world, that's really, if you're at the strategic level, that's really what they would be doing likely, is they'd be saying, here's how you should set your priorities, and here you're having major losses, you guys need to make some hard decisions and reverse those losses. Rather than the detail of, here's a $25 claim, why did you pay that? That one should be left to the employees, but I think in terms of the overall direction, be willing for them to come in and tell us things we may not want to hear. Kill some sacred cows.
Thank you. And I guess I would kind of echo Corey's statement, is that I don't know. I think when we last talked to Bill Jiraki, he told us all to go out and talk to 5 people about trying to get a group together for the support of the public safety mill levy, and amongst all of us, we couldn't even get 5 people, let alone talk to 5 people, let alone get 5 people to make the commitment. So that's the whole issue that I have, is that if we're gonna create a citizens team, it seems to me that even if we open it up county-wide, that we're not really getting any input. And it doesn't matter if it's people that the commission recruit, or Wynn tries to recruit, or anybody recruits. It seems that we just can't get people that actually want to be involved with that whole function. And if you're talking about budget here, I'm thinking that, we're gonna build this team, and then we're gonna try to get meetings going, and then when we get into the heart of budget season, it's gonna be monthly, maybe even every 2 weeks. To me, if you're on that volunteer team and you wanna really be involved and know what's going on, you're not gonna be able to do it less than having a meeting every 2 weeks, and I don't know if we can get enough people to make that commitment. and if you can, are you gonna have 5 one meeting and 2 the next meeting, or are you gonna have 1 meeting and maybe none the next meeting? That's the whole issue is the citizens' involvement in the thing is the problem. And then the other thing, I guess, too, is if we're gonna have budget stuff, those people, you know, majority of them are probably working during the day. So how are you gonna get them, you know, and so now you got people, so you have to accommodate your citizens team, now you have to have department heads come to meeting at night. So now you're taking away from the department head doing their work because now they've got comp time going on. So I don't know how it's gonna work. I sure I'd love to see it work, but from being on the city council and being here, I'm not really very, I'm pretty skeptical of how that's gonna work. I think you're gonna start out with a great start and then it's gonna fizzle. And we're gonna be right back where we're at. I do think it's a good idea to talk to Village Rocky, and I'd kinda like to talk to Story and, you know, maybe, you know, I know Brandon came in and talked to me about, Gallatin County raised their taxes. Missoula County raised their taxes 8%. But I don't know, you know, that we're gonna just say, well, you know what, we need to raise our taxes 10%, I don't see that floating. And we can do it, but, we're limited. The issue with it is that when Gallatin County raises their, you know, they raise their taxes 2%, they get $1.5 million. If we raise our taxes 2%, we get about $40,000. So it's not that it's gonna, you know, we're not going anywhere with $40,000. It doesn't really accomplish a whole lot.
Center of the podium. I did have a discussion with Eric Bryson about that last week as well. Because of that conversation with Under Sheriff Harris is how is Missoula County and how is Gallatin County visualizing these huge increases? And if you look at the mill value of Gallatin County alone, one mill down there is $291,000. That's huge money. And so the way Eric Bryson explained it to me last Wednesday is that with what they're visualizing in their growth, that they're able to assess that 5 or 8% increase because of what their values are. And so when they do a 5%, they do get $2.8 million, and that's big money to do something with. And that's within the realm of what Eric says they can do. We can do the same thing, it just doesn't equate to anything. I mean, our mill values are, what, 17,626. I mean, it's, so you add a little bit to it, like, we're not seeing the big change like those other bigger counties are. And, I said, is there hope? Not really, it's until things change, it's just kind of the way it was, so. It was a good comment, it was a good meeting with Eric though, so, I would agree that, with what you're saying, Commissioner, in regards to citizens, the one that I do see is they do wanna be involved, but unfortunately, they all have jobs. The other part of that is, if they're gonna spend their time, they wanna have that voice and that time be worth something. They wanna have something that's attainable at the end, and not just spend their wheels in the mud. And I think that's where, with some of our committees and some of the stuff that we've seen, is that there's just, we get together, we talk about things, and then there's just no forward progress. And then there's no way to take that and move that idea to the next phase. And it either comes from money or it comes from a lack of involvement, and people fizzle out and go on their way. So, I don't know. Bill Drockies, he is good to work with. I like the idea after the last meeting, him going back and looking at the entire budget. I think trying to pigeonhole one part of our issue in the overall budget, just to deal with public safety, I think that in order to really get a better understanding of everything that's going on, I think he needed to look at the whole thing. And I don't know if he's completed that or not, but he's very smart, and hopefully that I did have a discussion with Commissioner Fulford as well. If we're gonna talk about mill levies and things like that, at some point I will need to have Mr. Drocki back. I think the only way that that's gonna work is to have him to be kind of that forward motion, to get that going. So, I know having a conversation with Eric Bryson about that as well, you know, something that we all have to be on board with. It's just we have to have a solid voice that can portray what needs to happen and why. So, and I think that's good. So, that's just my opinion.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So I guess, so what we will do is we will talk to Bill and extend his contract and try to get this thing going and go from there? Is that pretty much the consensus?
Yeah, I mean, I wanna see how it's gonna work, and, you know, what the format is, and then, like, at that point, we can make our decision to go forward.
Okay. Okay,
That's what the whole white paper is all about.
Mhm, right.
Is
He'll-
providing us with
right.
information. I've heard an awful lot of it, this isn't gonna work, this isn't gonna work. I think we need the information of how it can work,
Right.
and then plug in what we know of our community, and then let the citizens make that decision, but I don't think we should be declaring defeat before we even have the information in front of us. I think it's extremely premature. So, I appreciate the 3 yeses. If those still stand, then we'll move forward and at least get a description of what this looks like.
Right.
yep,
Perfect, thank you.
I think so. Yes, Wayne?
Dwayne Hall, I'd like to know what this is gonna cost going to this guy. Have we got any idea of how much we're spending getting this guy to do this?
Well, like we said, it's $50 an hour for,
How many hours?
well, we don't know how many hours it's gonna take him to do it.
Isn't that like buying a car without no oil in it?
Well, we did, Dwayne, I don't know if you heard us or not, but we did ask, we're gonna ask in our conversation with Bill to give us an estimate of how many hours you think it'll be to create this document for us to start with. And then once we make that decision going forward, then we'll decide from there.
Okay, in other words, this isn't gonna be a done deal today until we get prices on it.
Well, we decided that we're gonna have him create the document, but we wanna get a price on it first, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will go to 10:30, Mayor Mike Evans, City of Townsend Law Enforcement Interlocal Agreement between Townsend and Broadwater County.
Thank you. Last Tuesday night, I believe it was last Tuesday, time's flying, but we passed the interlocal, public safety interlocal agreement at City Hall. City Council has passed. Corey has looked at it and said it looked fine to him. Peter has also looked at it, and Wynn looked at it also. He was on the committee. So what I need to do to go ahead is have you guys maybe pass that so we can get all the signatures and get started on the next 3 years.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions.
Yep.
In the past, there's been a commissioner on this committee. I haven't heard anything about what's been happening. Who was the commissioner that was on this committee?
Pardon me?
Who was the commissioner that sat on this committee? There's been one in the past?
Boy, I don't know. Did you come once? And
I came to one meeting, that
yeah,
was the, and I
that'd
never
probably
was.
be the only one we had was Mike.
Okay,
So it's pretty much, well, I'm sorry, Wynn, myself, Peter Simon taking notes, or Peter, yeah, he taking notes. And I had Matt West and Vicky Rouser. And Dave